what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. We've just witnessed our third off-season training activity, also known as an OTA. Phil Perry is alongside. The Senator and I are going to keep this tight and organized by leading off with 5 nuggets, 5 observations from today's event. That's the last one we have access to. Next week, we have minicamp. And then after that, off for a month before training camp. Phil, give me 5.
Takeaway number 1 is that Drake Maye was your second quarterback, Tom, not Bailey Zappi, as had been the case during the 2 OTA sessions that the media had been allowed to watch before number 3. And so that to me is fairly significant because I personally have been asking, why is this happening again?
Yeah, no.
Why is Bailey Zappi getting reps that Drake Maye should be getting if you're trying to get this guy ready to actually play at some point in the near future? And so Bailey Zappi still got some, but Drake Maye got more. He was number 2 behind Jacoby Brissett.
Loyal listeners of this pod will know that Phil has had that going up his tailpipe for 2 weeks. So it's good to see. There was Phil shifting restlessly on the grass and said, "Oh, he's up. Drake's up." When we saw that he was about to take the second reps and not Bailey Zappi.
That's an exaggeration. That's an exaggeration.
No, it's like a dog seeing somebody come home. You got another one, guy?
Yes. Takeaway number 2. Patriots offense had a heck of a time trying to do anything in this practice. And that to me is worth pointing out because this was your first sign of, oh boy, it could be a long year because of who they have on the offensive side of the ball. Jacoby Brissett's first team period, 11 on 11, they were in the red zone, Tom, which is difficult for the offense. I understand that because everything gets tighter down there. But Jacoby Brissett, the first group, quote unquote, went 1 for his first 5 throws in 11 on 11. 7 on 7 was much better, but it felt to me, Tom, you tell me if you felt similarly, when the linemen were actually out there, the Patriots had a hard time blocking. No Mike Owenu, no Chuks Okorafor at tackle. So you had fill-ins at both tackle spots, and it felt like they had a hard time blocking anybody.
Yeah, Michael Jordan was out there, as was Calvin Anderson at left tackle. That's not his spot. I felt the same way, and you can't put it on Brissett because for some reason, everybody appeared to be double covered. I mean, every place he threw, it looked like double coverage. There was no space, even when he threw to the perimeter of the end zone, just easily knocked down and slapped away. So there was very little they could do. This did shine a little bit today. Jalen Reagor, KJ Osborne, Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, throw them in there. They just don't have great length at the wide receiver position. And Polk and Javon Baker don't bring it to you either. So it's an ongoing trying to hit small moving targets.
Well, and Polk wasn't even out there and participating today. So not sure.
Baker, you mean?
Sorry, Baker, not Polk. Polk was out there. Did not do a whole lot. You know, it was not like he stood out. Would say, you know, we're still waiting for him to kind of pop and show up as a consistent pass catcher for this group. My third takeaway, Tom, would be sort of an offshoot of number 2, which is tough time for the offense. Tough time at times for Drake Maye. A little bit of an up and down day, I thought, for him. On the one hand, made an accurate touchdown throw, again, in the red zone, back left corner of the end zone. Looked like he could see the corner's leverage. Corner was sort of playing the slant. Juju Smith-Schuster runs a corner. Nice accurate throw, nice easy pitch and catch. Made another play, extended sort of play situation where he's stepping up in the pocket. He's trying to go through a few different reads. He ends up throwing kind of on the move toward the line of scrimmage, sidearm, through a couple different bodies in the back of the end zone to Pop Douglas. So those are 2 nice plays. He had a pick that was just a spray miss, just an overshot of Juju Smith-Schuster that was caught by Caleb Ford Dement.
And that would probably be about a 15-yard. I don't know if it was a crosser or if it was just kind of in a zone, but it was about 15 yards past the line of scrimmage. And it was, you know, it was one of those, if he was a pitcher, the ump would have ducked. You know,
yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster, you know, is not like a leaper at this stage, but he didn't really even come close to getting a hand on it. The second pick, I think probably debatable whose fault it was, Tom. Drake Maye actually talked about it a little bit after practice. It's one of those, well, the receiver thought it was zone. Drake Maye thought it was man. So he thought the receiver was going to keep moving. The receiver in this case was actually running back Antonio Gibson. Gibson wasn't where Maye thought he would be, ended up being picked by Kyle Duggar. So some good, some bad.
It's a red zone check down too. So it's like, it's one thing when you're coming out of your end zone, you throw a pick at the 40. If you're at the 5 and you throw that pick, not that he's going to be throwing picks in November and December because of this, but those were particularly, oh boy, you can't have that type plays.
You want to go on to observation number 4?
Yes, please.
Okay, observation number 4.
Sorry for interrupting. I interrupt you and tell you how sorry I was.
Observation number 4 is that Alex Austin today was your number 2 cornerback opposite Christian Gonzalez. And Gerard Mayo early in the practice. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty, but this is interesting for the people that have some interest in the defensive side of things. Gerard Mayo called Alex Austin, and we know now he's an NFL player. It sounds like they don't believe what Alex Austin was able to do end of last year was any sort of fluke. So he was out there with guys like Jawan Bentley and Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers and Christian Gonzalez. So just keep an eye on him in terms of if they're looking for that true number 2 guy to play on the outside. John Jones wasn't there today, but Alex Austin seems to have the coaching staff's trust in that regard.
Hit me with number 5, or was that number 5?
That was number 4. Thanks for following along here. Hold, please.
See, what happened here, folks, is Phil and I had to scurry back, and Phil did his next Pat's podcast. So he's still gleaning from his notes exactly what he wants to call number 5. I'm not sure he's read the pod plan. He might overlap me. Let's tune in and see how this goes.
Observation number 5. And you are going to give us some more detail on this.
Nope. See, he did overlap.
At some point, this offensive line is going to have to allow the offense to practice. So we kind of covered broadly what was going on. And I told you they couldn't block. But again, this is sort of an offshoot of that point, which was point number 2 for those taking notes at home. If it's already, before we even get to minicamp, at the point where the offensive line can't really consistently block backups with no pads on, and the starting quarterback right now, Jacoby Brissett, is visibly frustrated, which I know you saw at the end of a practice because they just can't do anything. You can't go through a year like that, Tom. So I don't know if it means signing free agent tackles to just come in here and be serviceable, because there are a couple out there. I don't know if it means already trying people in new positions. We even mentioned Caden Wallace. Caden Wallace was actually at right tackle today with the first group because, again, they were missing guys. But this could break their season. And in some ways, it makes Scott Peters like one of the most important people in the organization just to have a season this season, because the offensive line is like an injury or 2 away from being pretty messy.
Yeah, and so those are Phil's 5, and I'm going to follow up and just borrow the beginning there, because that is what ruined the offensive line. Instability is what caused the Patriots to have to draft Drake Maye this year. Everything flows from that. So last year, Cole Strange got hurt. He is still hurt from that injury. Mike Onwenu had an off-season surgery, which, as one would do prior to their contract season, you're not going to play hurt, so smart move by him. But they went into the season without those 2 players, and they were playing rookies, and they didn't sufficiently staff the right tackle position. So they had nobody there once Calvin Anderson came down with malaria, and Riley Reif played it like Riley Reif had played for 4 years, like a guy who should have retired in 2018. So as a result, Mac Jones was held hostage by the protection that he didn't get, and he sucked. And because he sucked, the whole team sucked. And because the whole team sucked, they went 4-13. The greatest coach in NFL history is getting honorary citizenship in Croatia. The Patriots are pinballing around the top 3 for 2025 first-round picks. And Drake Maye is a developmental prospect because the offensive line sucked at the beginning of last year. So you're exactly right, Phil. It changes everything. So go ahead, Guy.
No, I like that. That's a good, I think we did a good job of tag teaming that point.
You can't have, and to say this, Jacoby Brissett looked really good. in 7-on-7, and he looked really good in the previous 2 practices we saw. You know when he doesn't look really good? When he has nobody to throw to. I mean, literally no one to throw to. So it's ball after ball skittering up the hill behind the practice field because there's no one to throw to. And, he knows what he's doing. Van Pelt knows what he's doing. I'd love to know on a play-to-play basis what the breakdowns are, because on occasions when he did have time, he didn't have anybody open to throw to either.
Yeah, and just quickly to your point, quickly to your point on the 7-on-7 and how it looked. Like, I'm looking at Jacoby Brissett right now, 6 for 9, a really nice back shoulder throw to Jamichael Hasty, the running back, with Jawan Bentley in very tight coverage.
7-on-7.
This is 7-on-7
Yeah,
stuff.
looked great.
So, yeah, looked fine. Like, touchdown to Hunter Henry, who was, at the front of the end zone, right on the goal line, basically boxing out 2 or 3 guys to make a contested catch. He celebrates after, and the whole offense is partying. The party was on in 7-on-7, but in 11-on-11, it was dicey.
Here's my 5 nuggets. Juju Smith-Schuster looked good. Really nice catch from Drake Maye, in which he created separation down the goal line in the red zone. Nice slant catch. I believe that was from Jacoby Brissett on a nice dart. That might have been an 11-on-11 dart for a touchdown. But then after the final play of one session, he limped off. Not in total disrepair, but I don't know if I saw him after that on the field. It was very late in the practice when that happened. So we're going to keep an eye on him for minicamp availability next week. Disappointing for a guy who was excited about being at 100%. Nugget 2, the best offensive player they have and the best offensive player they'll have all year is Demario Douglas. He was their best player, most explosive player last year. He's going to be that again. He is impossible to guard, as they say. And he had a terrific day today. Phil, thoughts?
Strong statement. I mean, I know this isn't the most talented offense we've ever seen, but is he definitely going to be better than someone like, for instance, Ramondre Stevenson?
Yes.
Okay.
People will spend more time worrying about Demario Douglas than they will Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson is interchangeable. Demario Douglas has rare ability. Meanwhile, I mentioned already the jailbreak protection just too often, and Jacoby Brissett was pissed about it.
What'd you see from Jacoby Brissett? What'd you see?
After the final rep, he threw for about the 4th time. You guys all remember the number of touchdown passes that David Givens and Jabbar Gaffney would catch along the back line of the end zone, or Aaron Hernandez, for instance, because everything else was covered. So the place you go last is throwing it at the goalpost. So Jacoby Brissett must have thrown 4 or 5 balls to the goalpost, and poor Jalen Reagor was just, you can't see him. He's too small back there. And there's safeties and linebackers and everything else over him. And after the final rep, you saw him just frustrated, Brissett, and walk over and briefly have just a little palms to the air conversation with Alex Van Pelt, and then just grab his water and go about his business. I'm sure that it looks that bad all the time around the NFL, but this is a new and newly installed system with players who are just getting to know each other. It's going to take a minute. Next one, kickoffs. Phil, first time we saw some kickoff practice. We're both sitting there. We still don't really know the rules. I'm like, can they run when it hits the ground, or does somebody have to touch it? But it was interesting to see, and those guys do get to the edge quick.
They do. We will get brushed up on those rules. I did notice, though, that they had kickers kicking the football.
Yep.
Right. So this is something we heard the Chiefs and their coaching staff talk about recently, which is we might not actually have our real kicker be kicking on these, because these kickers in the XFL with this same rule tended to be in on a lot of tackles. So I don't know who that guy would be for the Patriots. Can you get Jabril Peppers in there to kick a football? I feel like he could. He played multiple positions in college. He's a tremendous athlete. Maybe he becomes their kicker. It allows you to get another tackler out there on the field. But I didn't notice anything crazy in terms of strategy. I don't know if you took anything away from the reps we saw, but that's going to be, once we get to training camp, who they are using there. Like, I will say this, it looked like Jalen Polk was returning kicks. Not the only one, but he was among those being used. That player is, and who they choose to play that role is going to be important, because I think there are going to be explosive play opportunities, Tom. So you got to get a good athlete back there. It can't just be about, protecting the football and making sure you live to see, your offense get on the field. Like, you should be trying to get a playmaker back there. So I'm curious to see who they choose.
It'll be interesting too to see how many long kickoff returns there are, because back in the day, you get a 40-yard kickoff return, 50-yard kickoff return, somebody gets hauled down. We might see a lot more go to the house, because there's not waves of defenders who can hang back necessarily. There was a point, and I can't remember, Phil, if they continued to practice after this, but in the 11-on-11 in the red zone right down in front of us, it got loose to the point of disorganized. And I said to Mike Reese, who was standing, I said, does it feel a little chaotic out there right now? Reese goes, a little. I mean, if you're practicing too long, then trim it back. If it turns into grab ass time, and look, the whole practice is, we've said this before, looks pretty organized. I don't want to be grading hard on a portion of practice that was half grab ass, but it looked disorganized to you.
Yeah, I know the part you're talking about. It looked like Maye was trying to direct traffic, and they were trying to get it communicated, whatever it was they were supposed to do. But these things are all scheduled, they're all structured. So I'm not sure if they were trying to squeeze something in that wasn't scheduled. But this is going to be our new reality, Tom, is watching how the Patriots operate post Bill Belichick and comparing it to what we've seen for the last 20 years. And where, listen, clearly there were moments where things were disorganized depending on who was coaching, i.e. what happened in 2022. Like, that was not an organized,
No.
trains running on time sort of situation. So it wasn't always perfect, even with Bill as the head guy. But that's going to be, fair or unfair, that's going to be one of the things we can't help but notice, because we are accustomed to seeing things a certain way. And when it's not that way, we'll probably point it out. Again, I don't know if that's fair, but it's probably how it's going to go.
And that goes to the point of that you make. We'll point it out. It will be underpinned by the notion that, well, that never happened when Bill was here. And just as you point out, it was chaotic in 2022, especially in training camp, when they started to be challenged a little bit and they could not perform the most simple and basic things offensively, to the point it was insulting to the game of football. Phil, we got Alex Van Pelt this morning in front of a microphone, and we thought he was real good on a number of topics. First things first, though, here's his conversation we had with him on reps.
We always talk about earning your reps around here. So as he continues to grow and have successful practices and start stacking those, then we could think about moving him up the depth chart. But it's a process, like I said, and then it's a marathon. So we're going to take our time and do it the right way.
I always used to say that this is not really an evaluation time. Is that for you guys? That this time of year was more of a teaching?
Sure.
You're not putting up the measure of, well, he's doing this. It's not evaluation. Is that going to continue to mitigate?
No, no disrespect, but I evaluate every practice. We're evaluating the drills, even the individual drills. We evaluate that. Are you getting better each day? Are you making the same mistakes? Are you correcting the things that we've corrected? So for me, it's an evaluation every day. So
we talked to Alex Van Pelt, Phil, before we got to practice. Once practice began, we saw that the evaluation and the reps had been changed, and leapfrogging Bailey Zappi. If that was on the to-do list for this week for Drake Maye, you can check that off.
I found it interesting to hear him say that they want their quarterbacks to be earning their reps, because I feel as though, and I'm happy he said it. I'm happy we got it on the record. I'm happy that was sort of that we came up with a description as to why what was happening was actually happening. Why was Bailey Zappi getting more reps than Drake Maye? Well, because Drake Maye hadn't earned them yet. Now, I don't agree with that approach. The guy was taken third overall. He hasn't earned anything, sure, but you made him the future of your franchise. So you at some point have to get him ready, because he's not going to be able to prove anything until you actually go ahead and you give him a little bit more and put a little bit more on his plate. But I am happy that they're, that they, before even we get to minicamp, Tom, that they clearly seem to have made a decision that they are going to continue to give him a little bit more. That doesn't mean he's going to be leapfrogging Jacoby Brissett in 2 weeks, the way apparently he did with Bailey Zappi, but they got there, right? What was your date? What was the date you kept saying we should be watching? And if he's not ahead of Bailey Zappi by a certain such and such a date, then we hit the panic button.
Minicamp.
Okay, so
if we're going through minicamp with Bailey Zappi still getting more reps, it's going to be irritating to me, because minicamp is basically, which we're going to have 3 days of it next week. Minicamp is, hey, this is what it's going to look like at training camp. OTAs are not indicative of anything. They're captain's practices. Minicamp is a mini training camp. 3 days of, when you come back in a month, this is the shit that we're going to hit the ground running with. So understand it. This is what we're going to wear. Now, of course, there's a ramp up period and everything. But so to me, it is good to have that, obstacle cleared, that pylon jumped over. Speaking, though, of when Drake Maye might become the starter, Karen Garegian, intrepid reporter for Mass Live, posed the question of, what do you need to see from Drake to make him the starter? Here's what Alex Van Pelt had to say.
I think you have to take that as it comes, really. I think it'll be a combination of a couple things, when those decisions are made, and it'll be made together, as a group with Elliott and Coach Mayo. But when that time comes, we'll see. But there is no timetable on when that time comes. Jacoby, again, is our starter, and he's playing excellent football for us in the spring, and Drake is coming on. So until that changes, we're going to stick with what we got. Don't
count on seeing Drake Maye anytime soon. They're happy with the way Jacoby Brissett looks. They would be better off with Myers somewhere in this offense, but they don't got him. And instead you have Jacoby Brissett, who is going to have hands at 10-2 and trying to lead these guys forward, as distasteful as it seems to Jacoby at some points.
And that's okay. And that's how it should go. And especially based on how the offense could look as a group, which we've already discussed here, the longer, the better. Although I do think, Tom, we talked about this on Early Edition briefly last night, you have to get Drake Maye enough in the way of reps and real live game action this year that you have an understanding of what you have in Drake Maye before you get to next year's draft, and you might have a top 3 pick again. Because there might be a situation where the next Joe Burrow or the next Jaden Daniels or the next player that we don't know about right now, but we will know about in 8 months or so, pops up, and you're sitting there saying, oh, league seems to be real high on this guy coming out of college. Maybe we should take him. I wish we knew what Drake Maye was,
right?
But we sat him all year. So at some point, they do got to get him in there.
If you're 2-9, get him in there. He gets the last 6 games or whatever it is. That's the issue, though, is if you're 4-5 or 5-6, you're up to 11 games. You're not going to really make the switch at that point. That's what was so precarious about what the Miami Dolphins were trying to do a few years ago, when Ryan Fitzpatrick was playing pretty well. Team wasn't necessarily winning games, but Fitzpatrick was playing well enough. And then they slapped Tua in there. And Tua played so poorly that they had to take him back out and put Ryan Fitzpatrick in. So you don't want to see that.
No, you don't.
Thank you. All right. Footwork, a lot of footwork talk. We had Alex Van Pelt weighing in on what Drake Maye is trying to do and why it's so important. It's not just the footwork we're talking about when we were discussing his ability as a prospect. It's now that he's in this offense, how vital the footwork is to this particular offense and where your feet are relative to the play call. Where are your feet based upon the timing as you come away from center for this particular handoff, for this drop, for this 7-step drop, 5-step drop? So good news. Alex Van Pelt said right now the improvements that he's seeing are calling plays from the huddle from Drake Maye and playing in rhythm and in time with his feet. Those are the biggest strides that he's seen made. And the reason the feet are so important is Alex Van Pelt said, quote, because in our system, it's all based on timing and rhythm in the passing game, and the left foot forward, meaning under center, He's got his left foot forward, right foot back, and the first step he takes, I believe, is with the right foot extending away. It's always given this offense the best chance to play on time and in rhythm. So he's impressed with the ability to pick up the footwork changes by Drake Maye. Phil, you asked Van Pelt about thinking the position too much in Drake Maye and whether Van Pelt's concerned about that.
Yeah, and he basically said, I thought it was really interesting because he basically said, well, no, we're throwing everything at him now. And I asked, as a follow-up, do you worry about him becoming a little robotic? And his answer was essentially, he's going to look robotic now. It may look, overly mechanical now, but the hope is it becomes muscle memory and everything becomes a little bit more fluid as you get more and more accustomed to this stuff. So I find that really interesting. I had a long conversation with JT O'Sullivan of the quarterback school, played about a decade in the league at the quarterback position and spent some time in this Mike McCarthy West Coast timing and rhythm based offense. And he gave some great detail as to, how the feet and the offense and your reads need to be synced up and why they spend so much time. We talked about, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Tom, all the quarterback drills that we saw them going through and gaining, the almost comical footwork drills of over exaggerating, how much space you should be chewing up with your feet in your first 3 steps away from center and having your eyes up and working your way through the bags and watching guys trip over the bags before they throw into the net. There's a reason why they do all that stuff and they spend so much time on it, is because they believe in its importance. And Drake Maye might have as much, if not more, work to do when it comes to that stuff of any quarterback that was drafted in the first round this year. So you combine that with the fact that the offense could look the way it looked today for some time, which is not great.
Mm-hmm.
And you add it all up, and it might be a while before we see this guy in real game action.
Yeah, and it comes through when Van Pelt talks that he's very, very confident in a very specific way of doing things. It would take a lot to bust him off of his plan, because it's not a plan that he has hatched. It's one that he said you could trace it back to Paul Hackett, who was also under Bill Walsh, the 49ers. So it's Hackett was with the Niners and Walsh, and then with the Packers and Mariucci and all those other characters who've carried on through the years to the point where it's Kyle Shanahan, et cetera. And he said, Van Pelt did, we trust that process. You have to train properly for a marathon, and that's the same with the quarterback. There's a process, and we follow it. You can't just stick a guy out there and expect him to be successful without the proper training. So it's a process, and we're making moves in the right direction. So I think the best move to make, and for us right now, Phil, is to get ready for early edition. Okay, we're making progress. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and I think we need to pace ourselves.
I'm down with that.
And call it a pod.
I like that idea.
Okay.
What are you going to do? What do you do to get ready for early edition? Do you take a nap? Do you go get a coffee?
I'll be honest. I went to Panera and I got a broccoli cheddar and I had a Bravo turkey sandwich, and it feels like some of the, it's not MSG in turkey, is it? I'm very sleepy right now. I'm very, very, very sleepy.
I could see it in your eyes.
I know. I could feel my eyes were closing. I felt like friggin' Mike Francesa. Got to get off.
So nap. So nap's the answer?
Yeah, I'm going to be sharp as a tack for.
Oh yeah, you're going to be firing on all cylinders, baby, when we get up there at 9 o'clock.
I'm a big nap guy. Me and Winston Churchill. All right.
90 minutes.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.